Howdy folks, I do hope you've all had a great weekend, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. This episode is once again sponsored by Nordpass. New for September, you can keep your password safe and organised this fall with the back to school sale. Go to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES to get 74% off a 2-year Nordpass premium plan, plus you get an additional 4 months for free. This deal is only available for a limited time. Nordpass is the password manager that I use. I am very happy to recommend it to all of you. It just takes the stress out of remembering all of your passwords across multiple websites and multiple devices using zero-knowledge architecture, so all of your data is encrypted on your devices before it reaches Nord servers for backup and synchronization. Which means you no longer have to do anything as mind-bogglingly stupid as using the exact same 2 passwords on every website and login that I had for years, which was just asking for trouble. And I did it, of course, because it was simple and easy and convenient, and that's the beauty of using a password manager like Nordpass, because it is simple and easy and convenient. And unlike saving all of your passwords on Google Chrome, yeah, we've all done it, it's secure. So head on over to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES, or just click the link in the video description to get yourself 74% off 2 years worth of peace of mind, plus 4 months for free. Here's a spotted news that you may not be aware of. I certainly wasn't, I only found out yesterday. Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine is 10 years old this year. And if you own it on Steam, even if it isn't installed, I recommend you go and check your Steam library, because if you do own it on Steam, you now own Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine Anniversary Edition, completely free. So what exactly is in this Anniversary Edition? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but what it looks like is the base game, which obviously you already own, and every single piece of DLC that's ever been released for it over the course of the last 10 years, including the Chaos Unleashed map pack, Dreadnought Assault DLC, Iron Hand Veteran Chapter Pack DLC, Death God Champion Chapter Pack DLC, Golden Relic Bolt Gun, Golden Relic Chainsword, Power Sword, Blood Angels Veteran Armor Set, Salamanders Veteran Armor Set, Alpha Legion Champion Armor Set, Legion of the Damned Armor Set, Emperor's Elite Pack, Traitor Legions Pack, and more. Now, if you're a Warhammer 40,000 fan and you're feeling conflicted by this news, don't worry, it's not Games Workshop being really generous. This is their publisher, Sega, being really generous. Games Workshop are a bunch of horrible shits. If you are a Warhammer fan, I'm sure you're already aware that they fairly recently started, well, what they see as cracking down on their intellectual property, and what everybody else sees as just being a bunch of horrible shits. They're basically going after anybody who even looks as if they might be thinking of doing anything vaguely Warhammer related without paying a license fee. There's an article on medium.com written by Cory Doctorow, the famous writer, that perfectly sums up exactly what it is Games Workshop has just done and what they've been doing for years. You see, Games Workshop has consistently led the intellectual property bully pack, indiscriminately terrorising the Warhammer 40k fans who made it a massive commercial success. One of the biggest things that sets Warhammer apart from other tabletop games is that it's not media that you consume, it's media that you produce. Because the amount of art and effort that goes into painting these Warhammer armies is absolutely mind-boggling. And Games Workshop has become ridiculously rich off this, and they hate it. See, for years they've pursued fans for producing their own fan-made supplements and additions to the game. The more Warhammer players complained about the indiscriminate censorship of their fan media, the harder Games Workshop cracked down on them, wiping out whole genres of creative work. Games Workshop claimed it was only defending its rights, making you a crook for having the audacity not to put their shareholders' interests ahead of your own. Then Games Workshop claimed a trademark. This is true, by the way. They claimed a trademark on Space Marine, a generic term that had been widely used in science fiction for decades, including Robert Heinlein's classic Starship Troopers as far back as 1953. They didn't just go after role-playing games that used the phrase Space Marine, they used trademark claims to remove novels from Amazon for even having the phrase in their titles. Space Marine is a generic phrase, but Games Workshop was betting that if they were sufficiently spectacularly brutal in their intellectual property enforcement, they could create a proprietary interest. For example, I know Games Workshop destroys anyone who uses Space Marine, so this Space Marine must be endorsed by Games Workshop. They also just launched a new set of terms of service, including individuals must not create fan films or animations based on our settings and characters. These are only to be created under license from Games Workshop. This is not how copyright works, guys. There are many ways in which a fan film or animation could be fair use, no matter whether Games Workshop forbids or permits their production or not. This isn't just overreach, it's a direct play against what's called the fourth factor in fair use. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of fair use. It is, unfortunately, one of those legal terms that tends to not be very well understood. There are four main factors that get taken into consideration whenever a judge is trying to decide whether or not something is a copyright infringement or does in fact fall under fair use. And the fourth factor can be summed up like this. If what I have done has not cost you, the copyright holder, any money, then it is more likely that the judge will decide that what I have done is in fact fair use and not a copyright infringement. However, if you can bully some people into paying for something that they've always gotten for free, then you, as the copyright holder, can claim that the people who don't pay are ripping you off, that there is a market for the use, and that their failure to pay weakens that market. Time for an example. Does anybody remember the famous Public Enemy album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back? This album was produced with thousands of samples, none of which had been cleared by the copyright holders, because at the time, nobody was clearing samples. Public Enemy was effectively the first band to do music sampling on a large scale. Now, if the right holders to those samples had actually taken Public Enemy into court, they would not have had the fourth factor on their side. No one was paying for samples, so a failure to pay for samples had no effect on the potential market for the copyrighted work. But in the 33 years since that album appeared, paying to license samples has become common practice, and the mere existence of paid samples makes not paying for samples legally risky. Because you can no longer go to court and defend yourself by saying, well, my not paying for using these samples isn't costing them any money. So because people have been bullied into paying for something that they'd always gotten for free up until that point, the copyright holders can now say in court, anybody who is not paying for it is costing them money. Which brings us back to Games Workshop's new terms of service, because if Games Workshop can establish that all animations and fan videos are produced under paid license, then any that don't pay a license has a weaker fair use case in court because the fourth factor protects existing licenses. And it's funny that the timing of this change to their terms of service just happened to coincide with the announcement that they're launching a subscription service, including cartoons, in-house hobby videos, and access to a vault of ebooks and magazines. This is basically bullying with a business model. Fans have figured out how to have fun with each other for free, and Games Workshop wants them to stop and pay them for its in-house version of that fun. Thankfully, for any Warhammer 40,000 fans, Games Workshop can't do a single thing about Sega bundling every single piece of DLC for Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine and slapping them all on the Steam store for the princely sum of a little bit less than £15 sterling, or around about $18.50. Good on you, Sega. Drop dead Games Workshop. In other news, here in the UK, the Advertising Standards Authority have just introduced new guidance on premium in-game currencies. They want games to make it absolutely clear just exactly how much actual cash you're going to need to spend on premium currency bundles to buy something even if it costs less. Oh yes, this is a particular favourite tactic of scumbag games publishers, isn't it? A cosmetic item that costs 80 coins in a game where you can only buy currency in bundles of 100. And the Advertising Standards Authority want this to be advertised as such. Also, advertising tricks like saying currency packs are best value or using limited time sales to drive purchases through fear of missing out are going to be heavily discouraged. Now, all of this is good news. Unfortunately, however, here in the UK, the Advertising Standards Authority, despite their name, doesn't actually have the authority to impose any of these standards. It has no legal powers. It can only make recommendations and suggest guidelines. But what it can do, and what it has been doing, is calling out publishers for breaking the guidelines and passing the names on to regulating agencies who do have the authority to crack down on them. They did not, however, make a judgment over whether or not loot boxes were gambling, and they passed the buck to the UK's Gambling Commission, which has responsibility for regulating gaming. It did, however, stress that games should make it very clear that they do contain loot boxes, and added advice against practices that push players to buy more boxes in the hopes of unlocking rare loot. This is all sounding very familiar, isn't it? And it's about damn time. Well, anyway, moving on swiftly to something that I'd always planned to talk about in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, but which, because I'm legendarily crap, I had completely forgotten about until, around about now. So, in the last couple of episodes, I've been talking about my desire to get my hands on a prop version of the legendary Colonial Marine M41 pulse rifle, and how my ambitions had taken a knock or two because the prop versions produced by people like Sideshow Collectibles are mind-bogglingly expensive. The airsoft versions produced by people like Snowwolf are not cheap either, and when you factor in the prohibitive import fees, and the fact that hardly anybody anywhere has any of them still left in stock, they work out to be, well, about as expensive as the Sideshow prop pulse rifle. But then it was pointed out to me by a couple of my loyal salt miners on the Salt Mines Discord server that Hasbro were producing a Nerf gun version of the M41 pulse rifle, and it looks absolutely amazing. Aside from the fact that it's all white and orange and yellow, and more importantly, it is incredibly affordable. The fact that I would have to repaint it to actually look like a screen-accurate pulse rifle, however, well, that's not necessarily going to be a bad thing, because I could bring back Workshop Wednesdays and do a whole video, or possibly video series, on turning a Nerf gun into a screen-accurate M41 pulse rifle. Unfortunately, I was so keen to get this Nerf gun version of the pulse rifle pre-ordered that I didn't pay that much attention to the release date. Seeing that it was going to be released in October, I thought, woohoo, just a couple of weeks, and then actually, wait a minute, that's October 2022. Oh, great. Fortunately, once again, thanks to my loyal salt miners, it was pointed out to me on the Salt Mines Discord server and in other places like the comments section on various different YouTube videos that the date format on Hasbro's website was the American date format. I mean, of course it was. Which meant that they're not releasing their Nerf gun version of the M41 in October 2022. They're releasing it on the 10th of January 2022. So, hooray! In the meantime, however, and before I was made aware of this, I'd been scouring the internet for other options. And one place that's always been reliable is the crafting website that goes by the name of Etsy. I don't know if any of you have ever browsed Etsy before, but it's a fantastic place for extremely talented individuals who make stuff to sell it. I've bought loads of stuff from Etsy in the past. There are some exceptionally talented people peddling their wares on this website. In fact, almost all of my Gandalf the Grey costume was sourced from various different creators on Etsy. And sure enough, I didn't have to look too hard on Etsy to find somebody who was doing some extremely high-resolution 3D printed kits of M41 pulse rifles, and they were even less expensive than the Hasbro pulse rifle. The guy concerned has a shop on Etsy. His name is Nalfi Made a Thing. I'll put a link down below in the video description to it for anybody else who wants to get themselves a 3D printed pulse rifle. Although bear in mind that he produces these things one at a time, so there might be a bit of a waiting list. The pulse rifle isn't the only thing he does, by the way, because I have also ordered from the same person the M314 motion tracker, also seen in the movie Aliens. And the price for the motion tracker and the pulse rifle wasn't that much more expensive than the price of the complete Hasbro Nerf pulse rifle. And he's also tossed in a freebie, because at the moment the only things that he makes are the motion tracker and the pulse rifle, but he's soon going to be selling the pump action grenade for the pulse rifle. The cap pops off, the detonator is spring loaded, and he's tossed this in as a freebie. Anxious to know what I think of it. So I'm not only going to be able to do a Workshop Wednesday video on the pulse rifle, I'll also be able to do a Workshop Wednesday video on the motion tracker. And then, in a month or two, when the Hasbro pulse rifle arrives, I'll be able to do a video on that and compare and contrast it to the 3D printed version. So, plenty more modelling content coming up relatively soon. In fact, I may already have the pulse rifle and motion tracker kits by the time this episode of Mingles with Jingles goes up, because Nalfie posted them out to me on Friday, so fingers crossed. I was browsing for other Aliens-inspired stuff on Etsy, and there's somebody that does a complete Ripley costume from the first movie, Alien, in 1979. I saw somebody else who was selling Colonial Marine clear plastic dog tags. Cheap as chips as well, like £6.99 for a customised set. The helmet camera that the Marines had mounted on the side of their helmets. And get one of those 3D printed for £12. Slightly more expensive was the Aliens Hero full-size smart gun. A bargain at only £2,288.15. Why the 15 pence? It seems awfully precise. Oh, if only I could justify getting that. Or be able to afford it. 5 foot long, removable ammo drum, real world weight. It's not 3D printed either, the whole thing is actually cast and welded and bolted. Somebody from the USA is producing that one. Oh, wow. I mean, obviously I can't afford it, and I absolutely couldn't justify it either. It's a ridiculous amount of expense for something that is basically just going to be a prop that gets hung on the wall. Plus, I mean, the smart gun itself is only half of the kit, because you also need the harness and the Steadicam arm. Don't worry, he sells that too. For only another £2,288.15. But hang on, Jingles, what about the Colonial Marine armour? Yep, he's got that covered for a further £1,500. And if you're thinking, doesn't look like it includes the helmet, you're absolutely right. Helmet sold separately, £762. Oh, hang on, Jingles. If you're going as a smart gunner, you don't need the body armour because you've got the harness, and you don't need the helmet. You need a targeting headset. Yep, guess what? £610. £533 for the shoulder lamp, and £457.62 for the welding torch. Which means I could, and bear in mind I'd still have to try to source the frog and leaf pattern camo fatigues as well, and that was an experimental camo pattern, and trying to get your hands on that, I mean, it's as rare as rocking horse shit too, but aside from that, I could have a Colonial Marine smart gunner outfit for only £6,177.99, or not far short of $8,500. Something that I would probably wear proudly to one convention, realise, holy shit, this weighs a ton, and then stick it in the cupboard and never wear it again. Money well spent. Yeah, you can spend a lot of money on Etsy, but you don't have to. I mean, you can spend hundreds, possibly even thousands, on an almost fully working prop replica pulse rifle, or you can spend £75 on a 3D printed kit and paint it yourself. You pays your money, you takes your chance. Honestly, if you haven't checked out Etsy before, I definitely recommend it. Even if you're not planning on spending any money, you can lose hours just browsing the kind of stuff that's available there. And you probably will end up spending some money. But if you're looking for that perfect, one-of-a-kind, handcrafted, customised gift for somebody special, you could do a hell of a lot worse than spending some time browsing what's available on Etsy. Well, I guess that just about covers it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, although I'm certain I've probably forgotten to mention something, like for example the fact that I have now enabled clips on the YouTube channel. So if you do want to sample and make a clip out of anything, that I've uploaded and create your own YouTube short out of it, yeah, go ahead, whatever. I don't care. Help yourself. I should probably also mention how happy I was to see how well the latest Gnome Abroad video went down on Saturday, the Operation Market Garden video. That thing's received more views in 2 days than most of the Gnome Abroad videos get in a month. It was extremely popular, which I'm very, very happy about, because the subject matter is something that I feel more people need to be made aware of. So the fact that so many of you loved that video, and many of you said that you think it's the best video I have ever uploaded to YouTube, I will definitely be doing more stuff like that because I loved making it, and many of you loved watching it, so it's all good. And that definitely brings us to the end of this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've all had a great weekend. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.